Anyway, leads us to the next topic is, what are the jobs going to be in the future? You know, with all this technology going on, what are the jobs? And our next speaker, Don Musilli, is the founder of Lightworld, a successful serial entrepreneur who developed a unique business model for Lightworld that combines 3D printing, manufacturing, and sales, and a training arm that's positioning to repopularize manufacturing. Now, when Don starts talking about 3D printing, he doesn't stop. This guy knows more about this technology than anyone I've ever met. He's taught me so much about additive manufacturing and what the future is. You know, we talk about bringing manufacturers to Northport, and we look at what's going on with automation, and this is what's happening in healthcare. When you get on production lines, automation is going even faster. So why would we want to bring in manufacturing when it's easily automated, which means however many people I have working today, I'm going to need less tomorrow. But additive manufacturing, he's going to talk about, I think, right? Yes. Okay, so it really sheds a new light. Don has done some amazing things here in town, putting 3D printers into schools, libraries, and organizations. He's a mentor to so many of our young people. One of them is here today. And introducing them to this really new and exciting technology. And Don is the guy you've read about in the newspapers who's going to be building homes with a 3D printer. Not years from now, but months. Okay? So without any further ado, a dear friend of mine, and a guy that is on the cutting edge of technology and jobs of the future, Mr. Don Musilli.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to preface my presentation by saying a couple of months ago we were asked by the Florida Association of Counties to attend their conference in Punta Gorda last Wednesday, which was designed to bring all the counties together and discuss some of the major topics that were of concern to the state. The county, the FAC, the members are made up of the commissioners of each county. So we were down there, and there were 5 items they talked about: infrastructure, environment, transportation, jobs, and housing. And so it's interesting because my presentation kind of follows that. So I have more slides than Tim has, so I'll speak faster than Tim has. Also, I really love his robotic stuff because we're involved in the same kind of thing. So thank you. One way. All right, okay. Little background. One of the things I will tell you about the things that I've done over the years is, as an entrepreneur, I run across an awful lot of challenges when I come up with a new idea, and everything I've done over the years, I had a tremendous amount of pushback. So every time I start something new, the more pushback I get, the greater my feeling is we're going to make it successful. So it's worked out pretty well in my favor. But I started a company back in 1985 called Pure Systems. We made HEPA-based refrigeration units. That company's now 33 years old. Founding member of Englewood Farmers Market. That market, by the way, is the largest farmers market in Sarasota County. Very successful. Englewood Innovation Center originally was Incubation Center, but people thought we sold chickens, so we decided to change the name to Innovation Center. And that was my beginning of learning about 3D printers. And we became very interested in that technology because I wanted to get kids back into making things again. And 3D printers were the logical progression of taking the design capabilities and then creating an object that they could actually hold in their hand. Lightworld was set up as a methodology for me to sell the printers, and we have put printers in over 50 schools around the area. We have a new one going into Woodland here very soon. And Jacob Denardi, one of my proteges, has been with us for almost 6 years now working on printers. Then we set up last year the 3D build systems to bring in a robot to print houses. And when I set that up a couple of years ago, I had team members that got up and walked out of the room thinking we were absolutely crazy. And the RAC began talking to us because we realized this technology makes some sense. And just like what Tim was talking about in robotics, This robot we're looking at has a degree of accuracy of plus or minus 0.5 millimeters, printing in concrete, which is pretty cool. And I'm also a member of the Education Foundation, chairs of the task force. So one of the things that we talk about when we talk about the students that we work with in our school systems, you'll see at the top it says, your history is not our future. And that's what they tell us. You know, they're looking at a future that's very different than our past. And as Tim mentioned, even in healthcare, you look at the number of changes being made. And I absolutely believe that robot they showed in the last slide is much sooner than you think it's going to be. And if you understand what's going on with the Oculus Rift, AR, VR goggles, with the new HoloLens, for a doctor to be in some other part of the world, be able to look at your body or look at that process, it's absolutely there today. So those are really cool ideas. So the economic drivers of the past are not necessarily the economic drivers of the future. And we want to bring that to light because I think sometimes we have in our area what I call demographic denial, where we have an older population that tends to want to keep things the same because the fear of change is really there. But in reality, those changes are necessary and really necessary to keep our young population here as well. So we think economic diversity is very essential. And I'm going to bring up a thing that everybody's very familiar with, which is the red tide issue. That has created a real challenge for the Englewood area. And what has happened is that all those people that work in those restaurants and for those rental properties are no longer working. And some of them are now homeless because of that. And the challenge we run into is the economic balance in our state. If you think about it, we have a very highly service-based business model. And because of that, if anything affects that, it affects it significantly. And so the other day I was talking to a number of the people at the commission, and I said, you know, Florida, if you think about Florida, its economic structure was never designed to support 18 million people. It just wasn't because of the way the market is structured. So we think you have to have a better balance of that, and that's what we've been trying to do for the last 6 years. So we think that, you know, the balance of business maintains more economic stability. The creation of digital businesses, which basically involves things we do with 3D printing, and also that housing and retail are only part of the economic development. Peter has been very proactive in trying to push those areas as well. This slide and the next slide are two slides we added to our 3D printing presentation about a month and a half ago. And these are very relevant. I want you to take a look at that. And look at the hourly rate you need to make in Florida to rent a house. And then think about the hourly rates that we pay people here in Florida. So these are pretty numbers. Also, one of the things that we always talk about are jobs. And I always like, you know, to say, look, we need to qualify the term. Really, being a physician is a job. Being a carpenter is a job. And there are two different types of jobs. So if you look at what the hourly rates are, and these are hourly rates without any taxes taken out and no benefits. These are 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, okay? So you can see what those hourly rates look like. So we call those jobs over $20 and under hot dog jobs, because that's what you can afford here in Florida. To get a home, you have to be at least $24 an hour. These are pretty accurate numbers. So if that's true, then you have to have jobs and you have to have business models that allow you to create the kind of revenue to pay those people higher wages. And in Florida, the job creation is primarily in the service sector. And it's interesting to note what Tim mentioned about the number of physicians, people going into the medical field. And I know there's a real shortage of nurses too. But the housing costs exceed the ability to own or rent. We have a low supply of homes and rentals. The Florida business models are mostly Florida-centric. This is really one of the other challenges we have. So I'm going to harken back to my first slide. Pura Systems, the company I started back in 1985, we make those HEPA-based filtration systems, and some of them are used in the hospital market as well. But that company is based in Indianapolis, Indiana. And anybody here from Indiana? Good. Okay, so because you know it's 2018 here, but in Indiana it's still 1977, so it's a very old-fashioned kind of community. So in 1985 we started the Pura Systems, and through the years we started selling more of the product line, and most of it went outside the state of Indiana. So by the time I sold the business in 2006, 5% of our market was in our home state. The rest was outside the state. So I asked Dave Hearn about my company last year. I said, Dave, what's the percentage of business you're doing inside the state of Indiana? He said, 5%. I said, wow. So I want you to think about that. So if you have a business model that's doing 5% in Florida, but 95% outside the state of state of Florida, you can have a business model that actually works extremely well, providing high incomes and be able to produce a product that can be used anywhere. That's why I like making things. Making things, you make money. It also allows you to be more international in scope. And just like Tim was talking about using, what did you call that, tele-intense, what was that word? Tele-intensives, okay. That was a really cool word. But that's actually true. These are the machines that we make. These are true HEPAs. These are scanned HEPAs that we use in our applications, and those are metal housings. So we use ECM motors. They're rated 122, 40, 50, 60, which means we can sell them anywhere in the world. The lower left is an enclosure that we make for printers. That's an enclosure that I designed. Actually made my own company. We sell those all around the country. Here again, it's made in Indiana. I sell them out of Florida. I sell them to the state of Washington. So you can see that we can be here and still have business models that allow us to sell outside the state. So we looked at 3D printing, which is actually robots, small robots, to use in lieu of the machines that are normally used to create objects. You all know there's no vocational programs in the schools anymore. They don't have wood shop, metal shop, engine shops in there. But these printers allow the kids to be able to design something on a computer, which they do very well, and then create those objects. And now they're actually selling those objects. We do training for kids, young as 8. We've been doing camps for kids now for the last 6 years. This has really been beneficial to us because it shows us how talented these kids are at 7, 8, and 9. They can work in 3D modeling extremely well. That's because they work with first shooter games, they work with Minecraft. They're really good at looking inside the computer and working with it. So it allows them to take those skill sets and then create something that we can print on the printer. And for the first time in their lives, they're actually making something and holding in their hand. And that aha moment is what we're trying to get because we think this is the next phase of manufacturing. We have over 42 schools, 8 libraries, and 4 youth clubs where we put 3D printers in. We started this back in 2012. I was just at LA Anger the other day. They've got 5 printers in there. There's a 6th one on order. Those kids are selling objects they make. They're making $40 a week, enough money to be able to buy the filament. And by the way, I just got contacted by a company in the European market that has filament that you can use that's surgical grade, which is kind of interesting. But at any rate, that's what we've been doing. These are some of the printers that are out there. So I want to let you know that there is nothing that's not being printed anymore. Any material you can think of has been adapted to one form of additive manufacturing. The upper versions are metal printers. I can tell you that metal printing is becoming very popular very quickly. The lower left are resin printers. The dental market is changing very rapidly. You're going to see more dentists using those resin printers to create your partials. They'll take an x-ray, a 3-dimensional picture, send it to the printer, and print those partials while you're there, instead of sending them out. And a lot of work's being done in that area. The bioprinters, and Tim is, I'm sure, familiar with some of this. There's a lot of work being done in printing in stem cells and other materials, and they're creating other parts. They've done titanium sternums. If you watch some of the medical shows on TV, you'll see a lot more often, you'll see those printers being used in various applications. They're printing tennis shoes. This is a Carbon 3D in Stratasys for Nike, Reebok, and New Balance came out this year. And 3D printing rocket engines. Now, SpaceX has done some work in this area, but there's not much that can't be done anymore in the way of metal printing. The military's been using printers now for the last couple of years. A lot of the old warbirds have not been able to fly because they couldn't get parts anymore. The Warthog, which is a plane that a lot of people love because that plane was so cool, was going to be mothballed. But because they were able to 3D print those parts, they were flying again. And the Navy's got them on board. Aircraft carriers, there's 2 in the space station. The Army has a group called RFAB. RFAB has frontline printers to print parts for weapons and other applications, and they're 3D printing houses out of concrete and barracks. So when Tim says it's moving fast, I'm going to correct him and say it's moving faster than that. It's just mind-boggling. So there's no limit to the materials you can print with. These are just some of the materials, and it actually looks like it has SKUs when it got printed. But on the left-hand side, this is general General materials. I print with most of those print materials in my office. We have a Mark Forge printer that allows us to print carbon fiber, Kevlar, fiberglass, onyx, and nylon. And then we can print a wide variety of the other materials. And of course, the other thing we've been looking at is cement. Been around since Adam was a pup. And this is a picture of Winsum, the Chinese company, now almost 4 years old. They printed 10 of these structures in 24 hours. And it caught my eye. I said, wow, that's pretty cool. I wonder how they did that. Because it's really interesting to see a robot be able to move, articulate that way. This is a picture of a robot that the Russians built. It's in a company called Apis-Core. And Apis-Core had a unique process because theirs was not a gantry system. We like this approach. Our robot looks a lot like this. A little bit different in style, but very similar to it. And this is a home that was just printed up in France, the French, the Italians, the people in the Netherlands, the Chinese, the Russians, and only one company in the US called Icon have been doing this. And the company in Texas is in El Salvador right now printing homes. Had we had a printer when Puerto Rico got hit, we would have had a printer down there doing homes. And I just saw the little island Indonesia got hit by that tsunami. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we're looking at doing outside the US. The one thing we can do with the printers is we can print them any design we want. So it doesn't have to be a rectangular home. It can be round, it can be oblong. So we have the ability to create these types of designs using the printer. And I'm going to go back to this before I do that. So the printer allows us to do a lot of different things. One of the cool things about this printer is that the design that we do on the software, like the design we do for the 3D printers, can be done by someone like Jacob. In fact, Jacob's done some preliminary designs for us that we've actually utilized. And then that software then we create the G code, then we slice it with special software, feeds the machine code to the robot, and the robot follows the pattern. Just like what Tim was talking about, we have this three-dimensional object where the robot is following the pattern, same thing. So we give it a pattern, the robot sits in the middle of the house, it can actually shoot its position with the GPS system, know exactly where it is. I would say the robots, it's almost scary to understand how significant this really is, but and with a little pad that's no bigger than a tablet, we're going to run the robot. So the young people will run that robot. So here's the cool thing about this. If I'm sitting in this building and there's a house there that requires some cement on a wall with a trowel, and there's a pad here to run a robot, that young man's going to pick up this pad and run that robot before he puts the trowel and screw that cement. And that's where the market's going. So if you think it's hard to find doctors and nurses, it's hard to find people in construction, it's hard to find people, you know that's happening. So we're trying to find a way to do two things. One, create more affordable housing, which is something that we talked about at the conference. And number two, be able to create a business model and a technology that keeps these kids here. Jacob's is a junior at UCF. He's a very bright kid. And I would say that Jacob told me if he wasn't working with us when he graduates, he's going to be gone. And I'm telling you folks, we need more of those people here. No offense to all the seniors, but 85-year-old people are not normally entrepreneurs. So we need to have some of those young kids here. One of the things that did come up in the conference when I was down there, I was talking to the executive director, and she and I were talking about one of the issues they thought was very, very important to the continuing advancement of technology and changing the infrastructure of cities and towns and communities was the issue of 5G. This, from the state of Florida, is their primary priority. Make no mistake, this is very important. Why is this important? Because without this, what Tim wants to do with telemedicine is going to be very difficult. Without this, big companies, small companies, high-tech companies are not going to come here. Without this, you can have the same problems you have now with your Wi-Fi and your cable. 5G eliminates cable because it's that fast. At the conference, they said they need about 65,000 units of this that very tall in the state of Florida, and they're starting to do it as fast as they possibly can. T-Mobile was there. T-Mobile was turning into that. Verizon's already got a system set up to do that. If you work with Verizon, you understand where it's going. So these are really important aspects. This is something that Peter and I talked about. And Northport has the capability of really changing its footprint. If you want to bring new businesses to any place, if I'm a high-tech company and I'm looking to move someplace, it's great to have sewers and you have water and you've got all those cool things. If you haven't got 5G, more than likely not coming. That's what's going to happen. So that's why that's so critical. So, part of our process, and this is a little bit more about the political part, but I think that, changing the economic landscape, we need to have somebody that has the capability of making those decisions. And one of the things I will end with is that I think Northport's got to stop thinking it's part of Florida and it's just it's another city. You have to look at yourself as a city within the area of the confines of the United States of America, not just part of Florida. If you do that, I think you look at it differently. So that's my presentation.
That exciting? I can't, Eileen, right? I can't sleep at night. I am so excited about this. And, the Don mentioned something about 5G, and I've been stating it on the campaign trail. We need to have 5G in Northport, period, end of conversation.
What
Every
is
single
5G?
home, I'm sorry?
What is 5G?
5G is it's wireless.
Oh.
Okay, so it's little poles, like you said, they're about yay high, I guess.
Yeah.
And they put them strategically, and it works off wireless. Ask yourself a question, and Verizon on the leading edge of this. Verizon sold the land-based system to Frontier. Why? Because wire is gone. It's moving in a whole new dimension. And how fast is 5G?
It's 100 times faster than Wi-Fi. And you don't need a cable. You can stream video.
Yeah.
That's how fast
It's amazing.
How do you get it here?
We gotta reach out to the people that are doing it and make sure we get it. I mean, you gotta know the people.
Can we get rid of Comcast then?
I'm not gonna speak to that right now. But you look at what's going on technology-wise in healthcare and in the jobs of the future. People ask me, they want their kid to go to college. And I said, do you want them to go to college or do you want them to be financially independent at 25? Okay? Each one is a path. Okay? And sometimes college doesn't get you where you want to go. So just having a college degree isn't the answer. And we better be preparing our students for these jobs. This is where the future is, and that future is definitely tied to 5G.